As dawn breaks over the streets of Matsuyama, Japan, Atsuko Yasuoka finishes her shift. Atsuko Yasuoka steps off the first train of the day, her face showing exhaustion and weariness. She's just returned from a long night of work at a popular nightlife bar in the area. Returning to the small home where her husband and children are still asleep, she smiles softly, warmly. Everything in Atsuko Yasuoka's life seemed peaceful and fulfilling, but a horrifying event would take it all away. Atsuko Yasuoka was murdered, and her body was found at the foot of a mountain, about 10 kilometers from her home. It took nearly 5,475 days to uncover the truth. Who was the killer? What did they do to make the investigation drag on for so long? Subscribe to our channel to join us in uncovering hidden secrets and finding the true culprit behind this case. Matsuyama, the largest city in Ehime Prefecture, lies on Shikoku Island, known for its serene natural beauty and rich culture. Besides that, it's also a vibrant spot with lively bars and bustling nightlife. But in contrast to its beauty and charm, the city took on a mysterious and ominous tone with the occurrence of a horrific murder. One morning in late August 1982, Takeshi Fujimoto started feeling uneasy and anxious when he received news from the Matsuyama police station. They informed him about the identification of a victim found earlier that day at the base of Mount Ishizuchi. Walking heavily into the police station, Takeshi Fujimoto could hardly believe his eyes. The victim was his wife, Atsuko Yasuoka, 31, who had been reported missing by the family a few days earlier. According to the police, the woman was found at the foot of Mount Ishizuchi. Her body was wrapped in a large towel, covered in numerous bruises and abrasions, making identification difficult. Some parts of her body had begun decomposing, with a strong foul odor. The police initially suspected that Atsuko had been murdered elsewhere and brought to the mountain to dispose of the body. The injuries on her body could result from being dragged or assaulted while her body was being transported. The forensic examiner confirmed that Atsuko had died from mechanical asphyxiation, possibly due to strangulation or airway obstruction. The time of death was estimated to be 12 days before she was found. Sitting in a corner of the room, Takeshi Fujimoto, still in shock, gave specific information to the investigation team. He explained that about 2 weeks earlier, he and their 2 children had gone to his parents' house, but his wife couldn't join due to work. They kept in touch, but after a few calls, Atsuko stopped answering. Feeling something was wrong, he and the children returned home earlier than planned. I could only ask the police to search for information about my wife. It's terrible. I don't know what happened to her, Takeshi Fujimoto said emotionally. Takeshi also provided his call history, showing that they last spoke over 2 weeks ago. The call lasted 5 minutes, but the content is unclear. According to her husband, Atsuko Yasuoka came across as a typical woman, dedicated to her work and deeply loving toward her family. To support the family, Atsuko had taken a job at a large bar in the area. Her work typically began late at night, and she'd return home early the next morning. Despite the hardships, she never complained, always doing her best to carry out her work responsibly. Atsuko was also a devoted mother who always wanted the best for her children. Every morning, she watched them board the school bus before she felt at ease to focus on her day. When asked about any special relationships his wife might have had, Takeshi Fujimoto started hesitating. All he could say was that he didn't remember or didn't know clearly. Explaining his hesitation, Takeshi stated that his wife didn't share much about her work or personal relationships with him. This puzzled the investigation team. Typically, a married couple would know at least the basics about each other, where the other goes, what they do, who their friends and colleagues are. A husband who seemed so heartbroken over his late wife, then why did it take him so long to report her missing? The next person asked to cooperate with the investigation was Mr. Hiroshi Takeda, the owner of the bar where Atsuko worked. Hiroshi Takeda appeared shocked upon hearing the news and said he would fully cooperate with the investigation team to find the truth and bring justice to the deceased. Hiroshi Takeda mentioned that Atsuko Yasuoka hadn't come to work for a long time. Although he couldn't remember the exact dates, he said he had sent someone to Atsuko's house to check on her, but received no updates. According to Mr. Hiroshi Takeda, Atsuko Yasuoka was diligent and skilled, which made her popular among customers. Some patrons even tipped her generously. In her relationships with colleagues, despite minor disagreements, she was patient and rarely bothered. Those tensions weren't serious. Everything was resolved peacefully. Atsuko was very good at keeping her patience, Mr. Hiroshi Takeda affirmed. Adding what he knew about Atsuko Yasuoka, Hiroshi mentioned the name Koji Yamamoto. From what was shared, Koji Yamamoto was the owner of a pastry shop near the bar. He was married, but his relationship with his wife was reportedly rocky. Although married for 5 years, they hadn't had any children together. Koji Yamamoto often came to the bar and specifically requested that Atsuko serve him. No one knew exactly what happened behind closed doors, but every time he emerged, he appeared noticeably happy. After it became clear that Atsuko Yasuoka was no longer at the bar, Koji Yamamoto stopped coming in altogether. The ambiguous relationship between Atsuko Yasuoka and Koji Yamamoto raised many questions for the police. However, multiple attempts to approach Koji Yamamoto's residence yielded no useful results. Neighbors around Koji Yamamoto's house knew nothing about the family's whereabouts or activities. The initial clues were too scarce for the police to identify a clear suspect. To broaden the investigation, the prosecutor requested information be collected from the house where Atsuko Yasuoka and her family lived. When the police arrived at Atsuko Yasuoka's home, they found it modest and orderly. The pale-colored walls and neatly arranged furniture gave it a tidy look. A few family photos still sat on the shelves. All items in the house appeared undisturbed, with no signs of disarray. However, they soon realized that valuable items like Atsuko's wallet, gold, and jewelry were missing. This led them to hypothesize that the perpetrator may have targeted Atsuko for her assets. This person would likely need to be close to her, or, at the very least, have studied her life in detail to know such specifics. Atsuko's neighbors described the family's life as somewhat tense. They noted that Takeshi Fujimoto was rarely home, often absent during significant family moments, for unknown reasons. When he was home, we could hear arguments. They seemed quite tense, one of the family's neighbors shared. This completely contradicted Takeshi Fujimoto's previous statement about an ideal life with his wife. What would make him lie like this? Could there be a hidden secret behind the story? It remained a big question mark. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Takeda, recounted seeing an unfamiliar car parked outside Atsuko's home. The car's appearance and sound didn't match any vehicle the family typically used. She distinctly remembered seeing Atsuko and another person get out of the car. However, it was dark, and her eyesight wasn't sharp enough to identify the guest's appearance. To search for answers, the investigation team looked for surveillance footage around the victim's home. As the area was relatively quiet with limited surveillance, this posed a challenge for the investigation. After a search, the team found a lead from a camera near the victim's house. Footage from a nearby store matched the description given by Atsuko's neighbor. However, the image quality was poor, and the distance was too great to confirm the identity of the person who appeared with the victim. But from this, they determined that the car seen at the victim's home was a taxi from a private company. The police quickly retrieved information to track down the car. They soon discovered that the vehicle's owner was an older man. This man stated that a young man had rented the car from him for a day. The next day, the young man returned the car, saying he had thoroughly cleaned it. Following the car owner's statement, the police located the car, which was parked in an old garage. Although the car had been thoroughly cleaned, the investigation team found a tiny bloodstain on the back seat. Testing revealed the blood matched the DNA of the victim, Atsuko Yasuoka. Using the information provided by the car's owner, the team obtained a lead on the individual who rented the vehicle, someone who might be connected to the victim's death. Surprisingly, this person wasn't a family member or anyone directly associated with Atsuko Yasuoka, but was in fact the husband of one of her co-workers. Masato Kuroda, an office worker, was the husband of Kazuko Fukuda, a colleague of Atsuko's. This raised many questions for the police. Masato Kuroda and Atsuko Yasuoka seemingly had no conflicts. They rarely even crossed paths. If Masato Kuroda had harmed his wife's colleague, what would his motive be? With mounting suspicions, the police immediately summoned Masato Kuroda for questioning. Throughout the interrogation, he appeared frightened and spoke hesitantly, as if trying to avoid something. After some evasion, Masato Kuroda unexpectedly confessed to being the killer, saying he acted in an unforgivable moment of lost control. He claimed that he approached Atsuko Yasuoka under the pretense of asking about his wife's work. When she wasn't on guard, he attacked and killed her, then disposed of her body at the base of the mountain. Masato explained that financial hardship drove him to commit the crime. Hearing his wife's accounts, he thought that killing Atsuko might bring him a large profit. When the police asked what he did with the items he took from the victim's house and how his wife, Kazuko Fukuda, reacted, Masato remained silent, showing signs of uncooperativeness. "Arrest me. I'm the only one who did this. I killed her," Masato Kuroda shouted. It was discovered that Masato Kuroda had no criminal history. He was even described as a model man who always showed his family love and care. A person like Masato fully understood that murder would lead to prison time. Even worse, he'd lose any chance to see his family again. So, was Masato's quick confession due to guilt over his actions, or were there other hidden factors? Based on Masato Kuroda's suspicious behavior, the police decided to summon his wife, Kazuko Fukuda, for a more objective perspective. However, Kazuko Fukuda had vanished without a trace. Colleagues mentioned she hadn't shown up since Atsuko Yasuoka's tragic incident. Kazuko's sudden disappearance puzzled the investigation team. Was she involved in the case? Was her husband hiding something out of fear of revealing her whereabouts? Information about Kazuko Fukuda spread widely across media outlets, with the police eager to locate her quickly. Amid the unanswered questions, the police received notable information. Someone claimed to have seen Kazuko Fukuda. This person reported seeing Kazuko Fukuda in Kanazawa, approximately 616 kilometers from the crime scene. Although her nose looked strangely stiff, her eyes and overall face were unmistakable. It was Kazuko Fukuda, the witness insisted. Using this information, the investigation team tracked down a major jewelry store in Kanazawa, where Kazuko Fukuda was said to have appeared. The store owner confirmed that they had served an unfamiliar woman, likely not local, due to her distinct regional accent. According to the store owner, the woman had come in requesting to exchange a large amount of jewelry for cash. An argument ensued when she demanded a sum of 1 million yen. Unable to meet her demand, she became loud and used vulgar language before storming off with 600,000 yen. From the jewelry left by the customer, the investigation team found traces of DNA from the victim, Atsuko Yasuoka, as well as samples from Kazuko Fukuda. The police concluded that Kazuko Fukuda was directly involved in Atsuko Yasuoka's murder. However, whether she was an accomplice or the primary perpetrator remained to be determined. With new details about Kazuko Fukuda, the police intensified their search. Surveillance was tightened at cosmetic clinics, train stations, and ports. The team believed that, with the substantial cash in hand, Kazuko Fukuda might try to escape to a distant location or even leave the country to avoid investigation. Yet, despite all efforts, they found themselves back at square one, with no further leads on Kazuko Fukuda. The police suspected that she may have undergone further surgeries or taken other measures to alter her appearance. Kazuko Fukuda's actions appeared highly calculated and meticulous, leaving no trace behind. A member of the investigation team suggested that she might attempt to contact her children. After all, Kazuko Fukuda was still a mother, and a mother's instinct is to care and stay informed about her children's well-being. Acting on this, the police quickly checked all mail and fax reaching Atsuko Yasuoka's home. They discovered a series of calls from a public phone, frequently at night after business hours, lasting 5 to 10 minutes each. Seeking answers, the investigation team met with Kazuko Fukuda's children. The children seemed more mature than others their age, likely shaped by the family's recent ordeals. From the arrangement of items in their home, it was clear they had taken great care in maintaining it. When asked if they had any contact with their mother, Kazuko Fukuda's eldest daughter said that her mother would regularly call her and her sister. Although she never revealed her current location, she assured them that everything was fine. "Mom said for us to wait, and when things are better, she will come see us," the girl shared. Meanwhile, Kazuko's younger daughter seemed displeased that her sister was revealing information about their mother. She kept tugging on her sister's arm and whispered, "Mom said if we told anyone, she would be in danger." Hearing the sisters' whispered exchange, the police officers remained calm. One of them gently explained the situation to the girls, encouraging them to cooperate to help locate their mother. "The law won't harm innocent people. The police just want to ask your mom a few questions," the officer reassured them. With the children's cooperation, the police quickly gathered information about Kazuko Fukuda's contact with them. However, Kazuko seemed highly cautious, sensing something unusual in the conversation, and abruptly ended the call. Although the content of the conversation was ordinary, when cross-referenced with previous calls, the police realized that all calls originated from various locations around Osaka. The public phones Kazuko Fukuda used were near subway stations, all ending in Osaka. It seemed Kazuko had purposely chosen different locations to mislead the police. But little did she know that this actually pointed to her exact whereabouts. The police launched a large-scale search in Osaka to find Kazuko Fukuda. Given the vague details from the phone booth calls, finding one person in the area was challenging. 15 years later, the investigation team received crucial information from Kate, a local resident. She reported seeing someone who resembled the suspect the police were searching for. Elaborating further, Kate explained that about 2 weeks prior, a strange guest had checked into her boarding house. Instead of selecting a spacious, airy room, the woman requested a secluded room with minimal windows and little foot traffic. The most striking feature was the guest's voice. After the police released a recording of Kazuko Fukuda on the media, Kate became more convinced that her guest could be the wanted suspect. Kate managed to obtain a DNA sample from the mysterious guest by inviting her for tea. To confirm her suspicions, she handed over the cup with the DNA to the police. Analysis confirmed the woman was indeed Kazuko Fukuda. The investigation team quickly approached and brought her in for questioning. By this time, she had altered almost her entire face, leaving none of her former features. During interrogation, Kazuko Fukuda was forced to admit her crime. She confessed to planning Atsuko Yasuoka's murder with the intention of seizing her colleague's substantial assets, a fact she had inadvertently discovered while they worked together. At that time, Kazuko's family was facing severe financial difficulties, and the stress drove her down a path of crime. Her husband, Masato Kuroda, out of love, had taken on the responsibility for everything. Kazuko stated that she understood the law's statute of limitations for murder. If the killer was not apprehended within 15 years, they could not be prosecuted. Thus, she embarked on a nearly 5,475-day journey of evasion. Over the years, she used 20 different aliases, frequently changing locations. She even underwent 7 facial surgeries at underground clinics, all to avoid detection by the police and conceal her identity. At the public trial, Kazuko Fukuda was charged with premeditated murder. The court sentenced her to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Although she evaded capture for almost 15 years and tried to cover every trace, Kazuko could not escape the relentless pursuit of the law and ultimately paid the price for her crime. Kazuko Fukuda's case serves as a clear reminder that, no matter how long they hide, perpetrators of crime will eventually have to face the truth and justice, showing that no one can escape the consequences of their wrongdoings. Thank you for following this thrilling story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss other intriguing crime stories. On the night of January 8, 1993, in the town of Palatine, Illinois, USA, a man frantically called the police station. His voice trembled as he said that his son, who worked at Brown's Chicken Restaurant, had not come home, and he couldn't reach him by phone. This left him deeply worried. Just minutes later, a series of similar calls flooded the police station. The common theme in all of them was that their loved ones worked at Brown's Chicken. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, the police immediately dispatched an investigation team to the restaurant. From the outside, the restaurant looked quiet, with no signs of a break-in or disturbance. The front door was locked, and the lights were off. However, upon inspecting the surroundings, they discovered the back door was slightly ajar. As they entered, the officers present were horrified by the gruesome scene inside. Blood stains were scattered everywhere, and several bodies were piled up, hidden inside the freezer. What had happened here? Who would be held accountable for this crime? Subscribe to our channel to explore the hidden mysteries behind this tragedy with us. Brown's Chicken Restaurant was located in Palatine, a peaceful suburb of Illinois, known for its tranquility, sunlit streets, and quiet life. The area was a perfect blend of modern living and natural beauty. However, no one could have predicted that behind this peaceful facade, a bloody tragedy was unfolding. This event shook not only the local area, but the entire nation. When the police entered the restaurant, there wasn't a single person in sight, but long bloodstains stretched across the floor. They trailed from the cash register to the kitchen area and extended toward the door of the cold storage room in the back. In the tense and fearful atmosphere, two officers cautiously approached the door of the western cold storage room. When they opened it, a horrific sight awaited them. Two lifeless bodies stacked on top of each other. Before they could recover from the shock, the bloodstains led them to the eastern cold storage room. This time, the scene was even more brutal. A pile of bodies stacked together. All victims had been killed. A total of 7 people were murdered, including 5 full-time employees and 2 part-time workers at Brown's Chicken. Each body had been shot multiple times. Some victims had also been repeatedly attacked with a sharp object, causing deep wounds, which made the investigation even more complex and terrifying. Upon analyzing the wounds, experts found that the bullet holes showed signs of light burns, indicating that the victims were shot at close range. This is because bullets, when fired, reach temperatures between 200 degrees Celsius and 500 degrees Celsius, which can cause skin burns. The first 2 victims found in the western cold storage room were Richard E. Ahlenfeld, 50, the restaurant owner, and Lynn Ahlenfeld, 49, Richard's wife. The next victims were Marcus Nelson, 31, Guadalupe Maldonado, 46, and Thomas Menes, 32, all employees of the restaurant. The 2 youngest victims were Michael Castro, 16, and Rico Solis, 17, both high school students working part-time at the restaurant. Given the severity of the case, with 7 people murdered, the police quickly established a special investigation team named Project Palatine, which included both the Illinois State Police and the FBI. This task force, consisting of 75 investigators, was assembled to devote all efforts to solving this shocking massacre. The investigation team began by thoroughly analyzing the crime scene. The first clue they found was a blood-stained mop in the freezer room. It appeared to have been recently cleaned after mopping up blood. This suggested that the perpetrator had a calm demeanor, or was a regular customer of the restaurant. After committing the crime, knowing the restaurant closed after 9 p.m., with no more customers expected, the killer calmly stayed behind to clean the scene. Next, the police recovered a total of 20 bullets from the floor and the victims' bodies. The weapon was identified as a .38 caliber handgun, but its origin could not be traced. Another strange detail at the scene particularly caught the investigators' attention. Near the order counter, a chair was placed upright, unlike the other chairs that had been flipped onto the tables in preparation for closing. This indicated that before the incident, someone had been served as the last customer. Could this person be connected to the crime? Every detail was meticulously documented and photographed, as any clue could be the key to identifying the perpetrator. At the same time, the police discovered that all the money from the cash register had been stolen. According to the business records, the estimated amount was around $2,000, suggesting that robbery could be a primary motive. However, a more important question arose. If robbery was the motive, why would the perpetrator murder so many people? Was there something deeper, beyond mere robbery, or perhaps a psychological or personal vendetta behind the crime? The police examined the restaurant's receipts and found that the last order was placed at 9:07 p.m., consisting of an order of fried chicken wings, a plate of fries, 2 loaves of bread, and a drink. This seemed unusual, because in the US, people are generally punctual. Since the restaurant closed at 9 p.m., this late order suggested the customer was likely a regular at the restaurant. Additionally, when the investigators checked the kitchen's trash bin, they found, at the top of the trash, 2 partially eaten chicken wings, while the fries, bread, and drink remained untouched. This raised suspicion that the last customer may not have come to the restaurant to eat as an ordinary customer. This discovery led the police to form a nearly certain theory. This customer was likely the perpetrator. The fact that there were 2 chicken wings in the trash further supported the theory that this person was a regular, as they were likely given an extra serving of fried chicken as a complimentary gesture. The perpetrator only ate a small portion of the chicken wings and left the rest of the meal untouched, indicating a calm and calculated nature. Furthermore, the act of cleaning up the blood suggested they were familiar with the restaurant or had the composure to avoid leaving too much evidence behind. The police decided to collect the saliva left on the uneaten food to extract DNA. However, at the time, DNA technology was not as advanced as it is today, so it took forensic technicians a long time to complete the analysis. Moreover, in the 1990s, the US DNA database system was not fully developed, so the DNA analysis did not yield the desired results. Expanding the investigation, the police also looked into the relationship surrounding the victims, but no clear or useful leads emerged. Additionally, the biggest obstacle was that neither the restaurant nor the surrounding area had any surveillance cameras. This made it difficult for the investigation team to identify the appearance or characteristics of anyone entering or leaving the restaurant at the time of the crime. It took many years for the police to pursue leads and traces of the perpetrator, but eventually they had to accept that, with the available evidence, the case had reached a dead end. All the evidence pointed to the primary motive being robbery, as the restaurant's cash register had been completely emptied. However, the biggest question remained: why did the perpetrator decide to brutally kill all the restaurant employees when he could have simply stolen the money and left? It seemed the case would forever remain a mystery after years of fruitless investigation. But 9 years later, on March 25, 2002, a dramatic breakthrough occurred. A woman named Anne Lockett, an important witness, provided critical information to the police. According to Anne's testimony, her ex-boyfriend, James Degorski, and his friend Juan Luna were the main perpetrators of the massacre at Brown's Chicken. She recalled that a day after the crime, James called her and told her to turn on the TV to watch the news. On the broadcast, they mentioned the murder of 7 employees at Brown's Chicken, and James proudly revealed that he and Juan Luna were responsible for the crime. Furthermore, he boasted to Anne about the horrific details of the crime, which terrified her. But the most frightening part was that James threatened to kill her if she told anyone about it. Because of this, she remained silent and lived in fear for a long time. After breaking up with James, Anne still didn't dare report it to the police until she met her new boyfriend. He encouraged her to come forward and be brave enough to expose the truth. Finally, after 9 years of living in fear, she dared to tell the whole story. Initially, the police were skeptical and didn't believe her. The case had been cold for so long, and her testimony was based solely on personal recollection, without concrete evidence. However, in her statement, Anne revealed a detail that no one except the perpetrator and those present at the scene could have known: the mop used to clean up the blood after the victims were murdered. Additionally, Anne mentioned that one of the victims, the restaurant's cook, had excitedly offered the killer an extra piece of fried chicken before being killed. This detail had never been publicly disclosed and perfectly matched the information police had gathered from the crime scene. This convinced the investigators to believe Anne's story. They decided to reopen the investigation, focusing on James Degorski and Juan Luna. Juan Luna, 28 years old, had previously worked at Brown's Chicken. From a young age, Luna displayed violent tendencies and had a penchant for destruction. He frequently participated in disturbances in his neighborhood and had multiple arrests for violent behavior in the past. James Degorski, 30 years old, was no better. At the time of the crime, he was considered a troublemaker. He had a penchant for violence and enjoyed inflicting pain and attacking others. Degorski had received multiple warnings for his disruptive behavior in public. At the time of the crime, Juan had recently quit his job at Brown's Chicken. The police had initially questioned him during their investigation into the victim's connections, and at the time, he was able to provide an alibi. In fact, after committing the crime, he paid his neighbor Eileen $50 to claim she had seen him at home at the time of the murders. With Eileen's testimony, Juan successfully avoided suspicion at the time. The police initially trusted this alibi and did not investigate Juan further, leading to the case remaining unsolved for many years. Following this lead, Eileen was summoned for questioning again, and she admitted that Juan had paid her to provide false testimony, which had prolonged and complicated the investigation. Meanwhile, advances in DNA technology had made it much easier for the police to analyze evidence. Specifically, the National DNA Database System in the US had been completed, making DNA comparison faster and more accurate. The police compared Juan Luna's DNA with the saliva sample found on the chicken bones at the crime scene in 1993. The results showed a perfect match, proving that Juan was present at the scene when the crime occurred. Based on these results, on May 16, 2002, the police successfully arrested the two main suspects, Juan Luna and James Degorski, ending an investigation that had lasted many years. After many hours of interrogation and under pressure from irrefutable evidence, both Juan and James eventually confessed to their crimes. The crime was carried out according to the ruthless plan that Juan Luna and James Degorski had devised in advance. On the night of the crime, Juan Luna was the first to enter the Brown's Chicken restaurant. He ordered a meal of fried chicken, fries, bread, and a drink, waiting for the right moment to act. While Juan played the role of a customer, James Degorski prepared the gun and waited for a signal from his partner. When the situation was favorable, James entered the restaurant with the gun, and both were ready to strike. When one of the employees noticed something suspicious and tried to run away, James didn't hesitate to shoot and kill them immediately, marking the beginning of the horrific massacre. After shooting the first employee, both quickly overpowered the remaining staff. In their panic, the employees were herded into the back freezer rooms. None of them had a chance to escape. In the freezer, James and Juan mercilessly shot each victim one by one. Once they were sure all were dead, the two cleaned up the scene, took the money, and left. When asked about their motive, both Juan Luna and James Degorski claimed they only intended to rob the place. However, because the victims resisted, they were forced to kill them. They said they hadn't planned to kill everyone from the start, but the situation at the scene led them to act beyond their original intentions. However, the police had a completely different view. The evidence indicated that the crime had been carefully planned in advance. The use of the mop to clean up the blood and tidy the crime scene demonstrated that both perpetrators were calm and had systematically intended to erase evidence. Additionally, boasting about their achievement after killing the victims showed that their motive wasn't simply robbery. They had intended to kill from the beginning. After the investigation and evidence collection were completed, both Juan Luna and James Degorski were brought to justice. This case became one of the most sensational trials in Illinois. At the trial, the prosecution presented a series of evidence, including the DNA from the chicken bones and witness testimony. Everything pointed to Juan Luna and James Degorski as the perpetrators of the bloody massacre at Brown's Chicken. Both Ann Lockett, James Degorski's ex-girlfriend, and Eileen testified and recounted the horrific details that the two men had boasted about after the crime. However, both perpetrators denied the charges, which prolonged the trial for many years. Finally, in 2007, Juan Luna was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Meanwhile, James Degorski went to trial in 2009 and was also sentenced to life imprisonment for his key role in the crime. The lengthy trial caused public outrage due to the brutality and lack of humanity shown by the two killers. While the life sentences were seen as justice for the victims' families, the emotional scars caused by the crime remain. Thank you for following this gripping story. If you found this video intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss out on other thrilling crime stories. See you in the next video. Tokyo, 1988. On a cold winter night, a horrifying event is about to unfold. High school student Junko Furuta mysteriously disappeared after school. At first, her family thought she was just staying at a friend's house. But no one knew that Junko was being held captive and subjected to brutal torture in a house in the middle of the city. When she was found again, she was nothing more than a corpse covered in horrific wounds. This can be said to be a case that shocked all of Japan. So what happened to this young girl? Subscribe to the channel to explore the mysteries behind it. Our main character, Junko Furuta, 17 years old, is described as a model and lovely student. She was famous at school for her pretty appearance and amiable personality. Junko always studied hard and dreamed of becoming a successful businesswoman after graduation. In the eyes of teachers and friends, Junko was the ideal model student. She was loved not only for her excellent academic performance, but also for her enthusiastic participation in social activities. However, her innocent beauty would soon be overshadowed by the dark tragedy. November 25, 1988 was an ordinary Friday. After finishing her classes, Junko Furuta began her part-time job at a plastic factory. As usual, after her shift ended, she rode her bike home. At that time, it was getting dark, and the streets were deserted with only a few dim streetlights. While she was riding on a quiet road, Junko was suddenly attacked from behind by a strange man on a motorcycle. He kicked her bike hard, causing both her and the bike to fall to the ground. Before Junko could react, the stranger quickly sped away. While she was trying to get up, another young man appeared, pretending to want to help her. He was Hiroshi Miyano. He said that the man on the motorcycle was a gangster and was watching her. The man might come back to harm her, and he offered to escort Junko home for safety. Still stunned from the fall, Junko felt confused and bewildered, but the young man seemed sincere and trustworthy. She decided to accept his offer to walk with her, pushing her bike behind him. After walking for a while, Hiroshi Miyano suddenly stopped in a secluded spot with no one around. To Junko's surprise, he revealed that he was also a member of a local gang, and that the man who had attacked her on the motorcycle was his accomplice. Hiroshi then threatened Junko, forcing her to comply with him, stating that if she did not spend the night with him, he would kill her. Terrified and alone in a deserted area at night, she had no choice but to agree to go with him to a nearby hotel and endure his heinous acts. Although he promised to let her go after achieving his goal, Hiroshi did not keep his word. A more wicked plan began to form in his mind. He contacted 3 other accomplices, Joe Ogura, Shinji Minato, and Yasushi Watanabe, the man on the motorcycle who had knocked Junko down earlier. Together they planned to continue holding the poor girl captive. The group met at a nearby park, where the 3 accomplices were waiting in a car. Hiroshi brought Junko to meet them, and all 4 began to search her bag, finding a diary containing her home address. The 4 men threatened Junko, saying that if she dared to escape or resist, they would go to her house and kill her family. In a state of panic, believing they could actually do it, Junko had to obediently follow their orders. After finalizing their plan, the 4 decided to take Junko to Shinji Minato's house. This was a quite large house located in a quiet neighborhood. Shinji's house had 2 floors, with the upstairs being used to keep Junko captive. Fearing she would resist or cause trouble, they initially pretended to care for Junko carefully to avoid harming their plans. In the first few days, Junko did not dare to resist. The fear of their threats and the dangerous situation made her silently comply. Although she was in great pain and despair, she knew that one act of resistance could put her family in danger. To ensure that no one suspected Junko's disappearance, they forced her to call her family. In the call, Junko had to pretend she was with friends and that nothing was wrong, in order to prevent her parents from calling the police. Junko's family, though worried because their daughter had not come home, felt somewhat reassured after the call. They had no idea that she was being held captive and brutally tortured in Shinji's house. 2 days later, on November 28th, the 4 men grew bored with their game. To find more amusement, they called 2 more friends to Shinji's house to join in this horrifying affair. The loud noises coming from the 2nd floor room attracted the attention of Shinji's father when he returned from a business trip. When he asked what was happening, Shinji lied, saying that Junko was his new girlfriend and requested his father not to disturb them. Believing his son's words, he did not intervene. Shortly thereafter, all 6 men violently assaulted Junko. She was collectively abused, and due to overwhelming fear, Junko had no choice but to try to endure. Junko was turned into a toy for the group over the next several days. They continued to torture her and viewed her as a plaything for their amusement. One day, when Shinji's mother went upstairs to clean, she accidentally discovered Junko still there. Initially, she thought the girl was just Shinji's girlfriend visiting and simply asked her to leave quickly. But days later, she still saw Junko being held on the 2nd floor. Although she knew this was wrong, she did not question her son further, stemming from her indulgence toward him. At this time, the weather outside was very cold as December had arrived. The 4 young men frequently gathered at Shinji's house, continuing to torture Junko. They even forced her to take off all her clothes and dance to music, and even made her stand naked on the 2nd floor balcony, causing Junko to faint from the cold. In the following days, Junko's condition worsened. The 4 young men did not stop at sexual assault, but also used various forms of torture to torment her. Hiroshi, the leader, even brought a camera to record those horrific moments. He forced Junko to watch the footage, plunging her into utter despair. When tortured to her breaking point, Junko could no longer hold back her cries for help. Her painful screams echoed throughout the house, tearing at the heart of anyone who heard them. However, even when Shinji's parents heard these screams, they chose to ignore them, believing their son's lie that Junko was just his girlfriend, and did not intervene. On December 7, 1988, the 13th day since her abduction, Junko decided to take a desperate action to escape the torture. The 6 men had grown tired after a long night of tormenting her, and so they all fell into a deep sleep. This was Junko's only opportunity. Despite her exhausted body, Junko managed to put on clothes and run down to the 1st floor. She found a landline phone and tremblingly called the police. While trying to describe her situation, her voice was choked, but she still held on to hope for rescue. However, before Junko could fully explain her situation, Hiroshi woke up and discovered she was making the call for help. In a fit of rage, he rushed down and pulled Junko back to the 2nd floor, not allowing her to complete the call. Hiroshi then not only hung up the call, but also immediately called the operator back. In a calm voice, he explained that the previous call was just a prank by friends, causing the police to have no suspicions, and the case was pushed back into darkness. After preventing Junko from calling the police, Hiroshi, in a frenzy, decided to punish her by pouring gasoline on her legs and setting them on fire. The pain made Junko scream in despair, but no one came to her aid. Her legs were burned so severely that she could not stand or walk. The others, seeing this, joined in, starting to set fire to other parts of her body. They laughed and treated it as entertainment. The burn wounds began to fester and emit a smell due to lack of medical treatment. Junko's body fell into a state of severe infection. Although Shinji's family noticed something unusual, especially his parents, they still turned a blind eye and did not intervene. Even Shinji's brother, who lived right on the 2nd floor, knew exactly what was happening to Junko, but he did nothing to help her. Occasionally, Shinji's brother brought Junko some milk, bread, and a few other snacks. However, her condition did not improve because her body was too burned and infected. With severe burns on her legs and other parts of her body, Junko was completely unable to move. She was forced to lie flat on the floor, unable to do anything but endure. She even had to relieve herself right where she lay due to lack of strength. At this point, Junko's family had reported to the police because she had not returned home and had no contact. The police quickly began an investigation. However, at this time, they had not identified enough clues to search for her. Junko could no longer walk and had to relieve herself right there, leaving the floor soaked in feces and urine. This made the 4 tormentors feel disgusted and uncomfortable. They even punished her in a more brutal manner. They forced Junko to eat her own feces and drink her urine. This was a cruel act, marking the ultimate depravity of the 4 tormentors' twisted psyche. From then on, for many days, they only allowed Junko to eat a small box of milk and a few pieces of bread, and there were even days when they did not let her eat anything. This left Junko physically and mentally exhausted. Junko was treated as a sickening toy by the 4 evil men who used her to satisfy their cruelty. But now, she was no longer clean enough for them to fulfill their desires, which made them extremely displeased. The beatings became increasingly brutal, severely deforming Junko's face. However, they had no intention of letting her go because they knew that doing so would lead to their arrest. On the 41st day of her captivity, Hiroshi Miyano came to Shinji's house with an angry look, having lost over 100,000 yen in a gambling game the previous night. His feelings of disappointment and frustration led him to vent his anger on Junko, and the others quickly joined in. By this time, Junko was in a daze, almost unable to make a sound. Her feet had rotted away, and she could not move. With a 1.7 kilograms heavy round weight attached to a metal rod, all four continuously beat Junko's abdomen for 2 hours, worsening her condition. By the next morning, January 5th, after a prolonged and brutal torture session, Junko had died. The group had prepared for this scenario beforehand. Hiroshi quickly implemented the plan to hide her body. He secretly stole sand, cement, and bricks from a nearby construction site, along with a metal drum with a diameter of 60 centimeters and a height of 90 centimeters. First, they wrapped Junko in a blanket and stuffed her into a suitcase. The group drove to an empty lot where they placed her inside the metal drum and prepared to take further action. Hiroshi, a superstitious person, feared that Junko would come back to haunt him. To avoid this, he placed a videotape inside the drum, featuring the television drama Dragonfly, a favorite show of Junko's during her captivity. Then, the group mixed the cement and filled the drum. Upon completion, they sealed the drum tightly with tape and decided to drive to Tokyo to dump the drum in the sea. However, due to traffic congestion, they changed plans and dumped the drum in a grassy area near Tokyo Bay to hide their crime. On January 23, 1989, 18 days after Junko's death, Hiroshi and Ogura were arrested by the police for their involvement in another sexual assault. Initially, they thought the police had discovered Junko's body and revealed some details about her. However, both later realized they were arrested for a different case. During the interrogation, due to a misunderstanding, Hiroshi and Ogura inadvertently revealed details about Junko, making the police suspicious of their involvement in a larger case. On March 29, 1989, the police conducted a search of Hiroshi's house. Here, they discovered several pieces of women's underwear. This prompted the police to further investigate Junko's disappearance. When questioned about the girl, Hiroshi thought that Ogura had confessed about Junko's case, so he directly admitted to the entire horrifying story. He detailed how they had tortured and killed the poor girl over 44 days. On March 30, 1989, based on the information provided by Hiroshi, the police located the site where Junko's body was hidden. After digging, they found the metal drum containing her body, which was in a state of severe decomposition, making it unrecognizable. Finally, the police identified Junko Furuta through her fingerprints. After more than 2 months missing, her body was found in a state of severe decomposition, but the fingerprints were still clear enough to confirm her identity. During the autopsy, forensic doctors were shocked by the horrors the victim had endured. Her body was covered in numerous bruises and injuries from being beaten with hard objects. Her skin showed signs of burning from fire and chemicals, especially on her legs and abdomen, where there were severe burns. Some wounds had become severely infected, causing her body to emit a foul odor. Many deep cuts and signs of torture were found on her body, including stab wounds with sharp objects in her hands, legs, and chest. Junko's internal organs, especially her stomach and kidneys, were heavily damaged. Her organs also showed signs of infection and malnutrition due to a lack of food and water during her captivity. This was clear evidence of the brutal crimes she had suffered. After identifying the victim and examining the body, the police immediately launched an investigation to trace the whereabouts of Junko Furuta during her more than 40 days of captivity. At Shinji Minato's house, the police arrested all individuals involved in this case. A total of 7 people were arrested, including Hiroshi Miyano, Shinji Minato, Yasushi Watanabe, Joe Ogura, and 3 others, including Shinji's brother and parents. Shinji's parents and brother were arrested for complicity and aiding in concealing the crime, as they knew Junko was being held captive, but did not report it to the police, even ignoring her existence in the house. The arrested individuals were taken to the police station for questioning. The official investigation entered a phase of clarifying the crimes that had occurred and the brutal acts that Junko Furuta had suffered during her captivity. The process of investigating and clarifying the role of each involved party was conducted meticulously and carefully by the police. Each suspect was interrogated separately to extract information. Regarding the role, Hiroshi Miyano was identified as the mastermind behind the plan to abduct and detain Junko Furuta, as well as being directly responsible for the acts of violence and sexual assault throughout her captivity. He was the instigator and manipulated the others to participate in this horrific crime. Additionally, he admitted that the main reason for the incident was that Junko had rejected his affections previously. Shinji Minato, the owner of the house where Junko was held, was confirmed as an accomplice. Shinji's family, including his parents and brother, were accused of being aware of Junko's presence in the house but not reporting it to the police, and even helping Shinji conceal her. Yasushi Watanabe and Joe Ogura, friends of Hiroshi, were also found to have actively participated in the violent acts against Junko, from sexual assault to torturing her in various brutal ways. The suspects had conspired to protect their crimes, from concealing the victim to destroying evidence and disposing of the body. The investigation also revealed that Shinji's parents, although not directly involved in Junko's beating, were charged as accomplices for knowing about the situation without reporting it. Each participant in the case had a different role, but all directly or indirectly contributed to Junko Furuta's tragic death. In July 1990, the trial of Hiroshi Miyano, the mastermind of the case, along with his accomplices, attracted widespread public attention in Japan. This was one of the most shocking cases in the country's history, inciting outrage over the cruelty of the perpetrators. Initially, Hiroshi Miyano was sentenced to 17 years in prison, a sentence many considered too lenient for what he had done. The other accomplices received sentences ranging from 3 to 8 years, based on their roles in the case. However, the victim's family and society were dissatisfied with this verdict. Not stopping there, the mastermind and 2 accomplices filed appeals for a lighter sentence. This action further fueled public outrage, as they believed these offenders showed no remorse and continued to challenge justice. After considering the severe psychological impact on the victim's family and the negative effects of the case on society, the presiding judge decided to increase the sentences. Ultimately, Hiroshi Miyano received a 20-year prison sentence, the second highest sentence after life imprisonment in Japan. The Japanese press and media at that time strongly criticized the court's decision. They argued that the Japanese judicial system had been too lenient towards juvenile offenders, regardless of how horrific the crimes they committed were. Many believed that the fact that the defendants did not face the death penalty was a failure of the legal system, causing the public to lose faith in justice. This incident sparked numerous debates about the need for legal reform concerning juvenile crime in Japan. Although some people supported leniency in handling young offenders, the wave of opposition prevailed. The Japanese public called for changes in handling serious crimes, regardless of the perpetrators' ages, to prevent similar cases from occurring in the future. Thank you for following this thrilling story. If you found this video engaging, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on other thrilling crime stories. See you in the next videos.